going to go ahead and call to order the East Consolidated Zoning Board for this evening. Can we do roll call, please?
Yes. Ken Klingensmith.
Present.
Ken Sanderson is absent. Kelly Rast.
Present.
Fred Wingert. Was that a yes, Fred?
Yes.
And Rod Richardson.
Present.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. I will proceed with the hybrid statement.
Thank you.
This meeting is now being recorded in the board hearing room with zoning board members attending in person. There is also an option for virtual attendance on Zoom webinar. For Zoom participants wishing to speak, please use the raise hand function in the Zoom app at the start of the agenda item on which you desire to comment. Comments will be received from in-person attendees first, followed by Zoom participants. When it is your turn to speak, the moderator will recognize you by the name or phone number used to join the Zoom webinar. Please state your name and the city and state where you reside for the record, followed by your comments. All public speakers will be limited to 3 minutes unless the chair designates a different time period. If you have trouble with Zoom, please call 913-715-9666. Board members, staff, and presenters, please state your name every time you begin talking, and please speak into the microphone so your comments can be transcribed for the record. This is a public meeting. We are presenting live and recording the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We have our agenda before us this evening. We have one applicant that we'll be reviewing. Is there any changes, revisions to the agenda? Hearing none, are there any conflicts of interest or external contacts or discussions? Hearing none, we'll move to approve the January 8th minutes. I've read the minutes and they seem consistent with what was represented. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you,
Aye.
Fred. Board of County Commissioner actions as well as Planning Commission actions, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman. Members of the board, Sean Pendley, County Planning staff. The Board of County Commissioners actions report, all of the applications that were considered at the January zoning board meeting are scheduled for final action at the Board of County Commissioners for tomorrow's meeting on February 6th. There is one application on that agenda that was, if you recall, the Wolf Creek Golf Course Driving Range Conditional Use Permit. That item was recommended for approval by the zoning board in January. Following the meeting, the applicant requested to change one of the stipulations of approval on the conditional use permit, and we provided an update to the board concerning that last week. Any changes to stipulations as recommended by the zoning board do require a reconsideration of the board, so that item will be remanded back to this zoning board for the March meeting. So that'll be on March 5th. That will be reconsidered. The applicant's just requesting a change to a stipulation. So we'll have a reconsideration of that item for that change. The applicant will be in attendance to explain the purpose of the change, and we will have a discussion. And then following review and reconsideration and recommendation, it'll have to be returned back to the Board of County Commissioners probably in April. But that will be dependent on the final action by this board. For Planning Commission actions, I will just mention there was no meeting in January. We do have our next meeting on February 25th of the Planning Commission. And at that meeting, we will have a year in review for 2024, all of the cases that went before the 2 different zoning boards, updates for the Planning Commission, as well as providing an update on the status of our zoning and subdivision regulations. We're continuing to work with our consultants with Clarion and Olson on that, and we're preparing to have a first draft review later this month, and we'll probably be having another advisory committee meeting in March. So more details on that soon. In addition, we'll have a training session topic for that meeting in February. That concludes board reports. Happy to answer any questions.
As a point of order, when that gets remanded back, is there a public comment section on that, or is that left off the process?
It would be appropriate for the board to open up the hearing. I don't know the official procedures, but certainly on the item that is being remanded back at the applicant's request for that change, that is certainly open for discussion. And the chair and the board is certainly would be fair to open that up for a hearing and discussion. They're not required to send out new notice. when a case is remanded back. They've already had their official public hearing. However, certainly it's a public meeting and anyone attending can speak, and the chair can recognize anyone to speak.
Great, thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Rod Richardson, just a couple of questions on the new zone, on the consultant's review of zoning and your work on that. And their initial considerations are going to be discussed. Will we, as a planning board, get a copy of the initial draft of that? Or can we, if you don't know?
Certainly, we do plan to bring updates to not only the advisory committee, but the planning commission and each of the zoning boards. As to exactly how the method that will be transferred, I don't know. I don't believe we plan to provide hard copies of the draft. However, we have recently started a project website. We're providing information on that. As a matter of fact, we have the draft assessment report that was discussed with the advisory committee that's been posted online. And we'll be sending out an update on that to everyone, including an update to our stakeholders that we've been meeting with. We're still meeting internally with other county departments as well. But yes, when the draft regulations are prepared, we do plan to post those online and open those for public comment. But yes, it will be, we intend to bring to the planning commission and each of the zoning boards updates as we go, and certainly make that available to the boards.
I think that's great, because I think if we have any comments, and I don't know that we would, but I know issues certainly about lighting and some other things that have been core issues here for the citizens we happen to represent. If we do have a comment about something we think they missed or whatever, I think that would give us an opportunity to place that comment on the record at some point before it's finally adopted. So in the process, that can be reviewed by the final decision makers, which ultimately be the county commissioners on that. So.
Yes, and as part of that also, we will be having public information meetings as well. So that gives the public an opportunity to review it, provide comments, and then those draft regulations will be presented to the planning commission as part of a public hearing.
Very good.
Any other comments, questions? All right, moving forward, we'll go ahead and review the applicant before the board this evening. Application number E24451 CUPOL, a conditional use permit for 17140 US 169 Highway. Staff report, Diane, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Diane Wicklund, Planning Department. Just also to note that there is a handout that we placed on your chair or desk there that's describing a change for a stipulation. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So the applicant is Jeff Wolfert with Lighthouse Landscape and Design. The property is located at 17140 US 169 Highway. And you can see the location of the property here circled in red on the vicinity map there. The existing land use is the rural zoning, and there is the landscape contractor business that's existing there. Has some existing storage buildings and outdoor equipment and materials. The site size is 70 acres, but the contractor business area is about 5 acres. So Lighthouse Landscape is a design-build landscaping contracting business. The applicant has an existing conditional use permit, which was originally issued in 1994. So the business has been existing on site for 30 years. And that CUP is for operating this landscape contractor business, and then in conjunction with the wholesale tree nursery. So the applicant is just here requesting a renewal of that conditional use permit for another 10 years. Just to operate the business in the same manner. There's a written narrative and site plan included in your packet. So the business, their subcontractors occupy some portions of this 5 acre area. And these subcontractor businesses supplement the Lighthouse Landscapes, their operations and services that they offer. So per the applicant, the traffic volume on the property has been consistent and has not changed for the past 30 years since that first CUP in 1994. Traffic in the morning consists of about 5 to 7 vehicles arriving at the property, same amount of vehicles that leave in the afternoon. Busiest time of operations are from April to October. And generally, business hours are Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and occasionally some operations on Saturdays. No more than 10 full-time employees are part of the business, and 20 seasonal employees, and no more than 15 trucks that are stored on the property currently. Also to note that the applicant, as part of this application, is reestablishing the wholesale tree nursery component of the business. And on the site plan, the applicant is showing a new 25,000 square foot area for the tree nursery that's located at the front of the property. And according to the applicant, they plan to plant about 200 trees in that area. There's also an existing communication tower on the subject property that has its own separate conditional use permit. Just also to note that we did review minimum infrastructure requirements, and the proposed use does have minimal effect on the infrastructure system, and therefore the existing infrastructure continues to be adequate for the use. I'll just go over a few graphics here real quick. So this is just kind of a surrounding aerial view of the property, which is outlined in blue. This is a close-up aerial view of the property. It's outlined in blue. You can see the contractor business area here in the kind of northeast part of the property. And then you can kind of see the very good screening that's on the northwest and south property lines that help screen the use. Here's just kind of another oblique aerial view of the property and the business. Here's a copy of their site plan. And just to note here, kind of here on the right side, on the front of the property is where that new tree nursery area and the trees will be planted. That will also provide some additional screening. Here's a picture of the existing buildings on site. And I have a couple of pictures just kind of the outdoor storage and materials area. Here's another picture, some outdoor storage. Here's a third picture just showing a different area and materials. And then this is a picture of their poly house or kind of greenhouse structure that's used for storage as well. And then in addition, in the staff report, of course, we did the golden criteria review. And so compared to that previous CUP approval in 2014, and really even beyond that, the zoning and current land uses really have not changed much in the area over the course of time. So given that the subject property is buffered from the adjacent parcels to the north, south, and west, and not located in a primarily residential area, the existing use remains consistent with that rural zoning and the surrounding zoning and land uses. The character of the nearby area continues to be rural and agricultural. And there is the major railroad and the highway corridor use adjacent to the east of the property. There are no residential uses nearby the subject property. So kind of given that buffering from the adjacent property and its location, the landscape contractor business does continue to be compatible with the rural and agricultural area nearby. So the closest home to the subject property is about 550 feet to the east across on the east of the highway, and then also on the east side of the railroad tracks. So definitely not impacted by the use. And so because the landscape portion of the property is well screened, and there's no homes immediately adjacent to the activity areas, there continues to be no detrimental effects to nearby parcels. And furthermore, there have been no known complaints from the public regarding the landscape contractor business, which has been operating for the last 30 years. The applicant has also been in compliance with the approved stipulations of the 2014 CUP, except for wanting to reestablish that wholesale tree nursery area as part of this CUP renewal. Just a quick note on the rural comprehensive plan that this site is within the urban fringe policy area, which calls for close coordination with the nearby city for future planning purposes. In this case, the closest city is city limits of Olathe to the north. They did receive a notice of the application and had no comments at this time on the application. And so you'll also see a memo in the back of the packet from the Public Works Department. And so planning staff is recommending approval of this conditional use permit renewal with the stipulations that are stated on page 11 and 12. We're recommending a 10-year term. And then just also to kind of point out, stipulation 6 just talks about that wholesale tree nursery area needs to be planted and established by the end of this year. And then stipulation number 9, and this is where your handout comes into play. So the applicant is asking to amend that stipulation number 9. And it talks about that the landscape contractor business shall be limited to 15 trucks. The applicant would request to change that to 20 because I think they're getting close to that 15 mark. And so instead of having to come back at some point, if he would exceed 15, that he's just asking for that change now. And then there's also the reasons for recommendation of approval on page 12 and 13. And then I have a proposed motion up on one of the slides for the board's reference if you want to use that. With that, I'm here for questions, and the applicant is also present.
Any questions of staff?
Mr. Chairman, Rod Richardson, this is a long-standing use here at this location, and if this is granted, it's going to be an even longer use at this location. Apparently, from what I see, no issues have arisen with it. Staff's recommending approval. So the only real question I have is, at some point, when you have a piece of land that has been subject to conditional use for long enough, if it were to somebody come in and ask for rezoning in that might be inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, is there any concern by you that a conditional use permit longer than 10 years, considering all the other conditional use permits, might somehow impact this being considered, for all practical purposes, virtual rezoning of the property? I know that's kind of a legal issue, but I've seen that come up in Kansas before, where something's been zoned so long that, for all practical purposes, if they were denied it at a later date, they'd have a pretty good argument that it had been effectively rezoned by the longstanding CUPs. I don't think that's true when you've got sequential CUPs, but when they get long enough, that would be my only concern with extending it. But if we have a history of extending these to 20 years, or there are other precedent for that, should that issue come up, I'd be inclined to support it. I'm just concerned about that issue.
Yeah. Fair question. And you are correct. Those past renewals, the first one started in 1994. Those other renewals were also 10-year terms. Obviously, a good time to review the conditional use permit stipulations. But yeah, valid question, valid point. Yeah.
I just think that would be, if a longer term happens to be granted, I have no idea, but if it were, and if the applicant accepted that, then you might want to talk to legal about that. I think probably they won't have any issue with it, but I'm just curious because I think I was on the board when this was granted in 1994, if I remember. That's a long time ago. But I don't have a problem with it at all. Looks like they've done a good job keeping it within bounds. So that's my only concern about endless CUPs, for the record.
This is Ken. I'm supportive of the application, but I am considering potentially looking at a longer term. It's been renewed 1, 2, 3, 4 times on a 10-year permit. I don't see why we would go for another 10 years when we can potentially, and we've had precedent that we've had 20-year terms, to say, let's put a 20-year term on this. Obviously, Rod's comments are important and valid to maybe take a look at, but I'd be supportive of actually a longer term considering the history with this property. Any other questions, staff? All right, thank you, Diane. Jeff and Susan are both in the audience. I don't know if you guys want to make any comments or say anything.
Jeff Wolfert, applicant. Thank you, Diane. Very well thought out and accurate presentation. We are available for questions, and if the board is willing to extend to 20 years, we'd be in favor of that. I'm not requesting that, but if that is on the table, we would be open to that.
Perfect. And when did you take over ownership?
The family has been in ownership since 1994, went back in, or maybe 93, and then got the CUP in 94, and under my father and mother's name, and now I believe it's in my mother's trust.
Great. And then can you state your address for the record?
Jeff Wolfert, 12310 Overbrook Court, Leawood, Kansas.
Fred, staff here, anyone have questions of the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, Rod Richardson, the only question I have is, would you anticipate, and I know this is just a theoretical question, but would you anticipate any material change in the nature of your operation, let's say over the next 4 or 5 years, that would be significantly different than what we've seen over the past 30?
I do not see any material change in the near future as far as the business operations would be concerned. I do feel like the 10 years with the stipulations handcuffs you to just like dreaming bigger. But I know that the access to the property has always been a point of concern as far as how much traffic can go on and off, basically a private road from highway access. So it's like, would I like to think bigger? Yes, but I understand that the infrastructure of the property limits that ability as we're currently operating on it.
Well, and 10 years is a long time, so is 20. So you can always come back and ask for revisions to this if you think the facts warrant them.
Right.
Should you want to do something else with it. But, and from what I understand, this has an indeterminate zoning. I mean, master plan, there's no specific designation of this as industrial, commercial, or anything. So it's kind of a blank slate. So you've got a location there that has a lot of possibilities, I would guess.
Yes, and I do think that the 20-year term does just make things easier, I think, for everybody. And I recognize that should business plan, business model, or aspirations with the property change, that yes, we can always come back and ask for how we would like to use it in a different way.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone on Zoom for public comment?
No.
All right, we'll go ahead and open the public comment. There's no one physically here, no one on Zoom, so we'll go ahead and open and then close public comments. Any further questions? Fred, you want to chime in at all related to staff, applicant, Kelly?
Keller asked no.
I
agree.
believe it's pretty,
Sorry, go ahead, Fred.
Go ahead, Fred.
I think it's pretty straightforward. I support the application and the way the motion's proposed.
Keller asked agree.
Do we want to consider a 20-year just to be consistent and not have them have to come back in 10 years and go through the same exercise. And I state that only because of other applicants that we've had, and also because of the changes we've had in conditional use permits of trying to get them to kind of streamline through on projects that, where there's buildings and things that have been longstanding and consistent.
Yeah, Kelly Rast, I agree with that. That's kind of has been the trend lately, is to extend the CUPs. So I'm all for that.
Ms. Rod Richardson, allow me then to propose a motion or make a motion, subject to a couple of changes in the recommendations. I move that the board approve application number E24-451 CUP for conditional use permit renewal for the continued use of the landscape contractor business in conjunction with a wholesale tree nursery located at 17140 US 169 Highway for the reasons and stipulations recommended by staff and set forth in the staff report, with the exception that recommendation number 2 be changed from 10 years to not exceeding 20 years or 20 years. And stipulation number 9 be increased to 20 trucks instead of 15.
Kelly Rast, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Fred?
Aye.
That unanimously passes with the revised motion. That will go to county commissioners for final approval.
Thank you. Yes, so this will go to the Board of County Commissioners on March 6th, 9:30 a.m., 111 South Cherry, here in this room.
Perfect, thank you. Any other business for the board?
Mr. Chairman, Sean Penley, planning staff, I do have a quick update I'd like to mention. If there's nothing else, any other questions? You may recall in your packet this week, you received a digital copy only. We are, out of necessity, going to begin digital only distribution of our packets. We had always, at the request of the zoning boards and planning commission, always provided both the digital copy and hard copy, which we appreciate that the board likes to get it both. Unfortunately, due to delays, significant delays with the mail, we have been forced to do away with the mailed copy. We looked into the various options that we could do to try to send it out sooner, send out plans sooner. But the problem is they cannot typically arrive to the board members' addresses before the meeting. We're consistently being late on the mail, and there's just really no way around that, unfortunately, with the mail due to these delays. We do not expect any changes to that in the near future. So we are going to be just providing these as a digital only. But we do want to make the board aware that, just as we did this evening, we'll make hard copies available at the meetings for any board member that would like to have a hard copy available. In addition, if you would like a hard copy of either the staff reports or any plans, any board member can come into our office at any time and pick up a copy. We just won't be able to mail those out going forward due to these delays. So apologize for that inconvenience, but certainly we're available again to provide copies as needed, whether in person or at the meeting. So happy to answer any questions.
Oh, makes sense.
Thanks.
Have you just, with the reference to the consultants, is there, I'm not going to hold you to an answer, but I'd be curious to know if there's any areas they're particularly interested in, or that through your discussions to date that they've been particularly looking at as, hey, we need to make some material changes in some areas. I'm not asking what the.
Yeah, we haven't been able to get it, to be honest, we have not been able to get into any specific details for changes. They're actually working on the first round of draft comments, the actual draft regulations. We have not seen that yet. All we have seen is the draft assessment, which has identified the areas that they believe that we need to update in our regulations. We have not received any draft regulations yet. They are now just got an email about an hour ago from the consultant. We anticipate those first round draft regs to be ready February 21st. So staff will begin reviewing them at that time, going over changes needed. And then we hope to provide an update in March to our planning commission, zoning board, and in the advisory committee. We'll have a meeting first with our advisory committee to brief them on everything and present them. But yes, we don't know yet any specific details of any one particular area or thing, other than it is going to be a comprehensive update. We're going to be addressing zoning regulations, conditional uses, development standards, sign regulations, et cetera. So it's a complete update, and it will take about a year.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else? I know, I was thinking that too.
It goes by quick. though.
Fred, you have anything?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
All right, hearing none, I'll make we have a motion to adjourn.
Kelly Ross, make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
All in
Roger,
favor?
Aye.
aye,
All right, thanks, Fred.
Go Chiefs.
Thanks, everyone.
Chiefs.
Good night, everybody.
Just,